Mission to explore Nepal.
Good evening, everyone. Tourism is important in all countries, as we all know. But this COVID-19 pandemic has even made it more pronounced, mainly for the fact that tourism sector is globally the hardest hit sector. And for almost for a year now, I think, since the whole of 2020, and it's still continuing, and we don't know for how long this will go, while we hope that things will return to normal as soon as possible. But still then we are not really sure how this is going to happen. So therefore, tourism has actually really impacted us, and particularly for our two countries, Nepal and Bhutan, because Nepal, 2020 was supposed to be a visit Nepal, and you had set a huge target. And in fact, I again had the honor of participating the launching of that event sometime in November 2019. I was there in Kathmandu to participate in this launch, but unfortunately, COVID-19 has derailed that. And for Bhutan also, 2020 was a very special year because Lonely Planet has named Bhutan as the country to visit in 2020. So both Nepal and Bhutan, we have really lost because of COVID-19. We have lost that opportunity. But however, on the positive note, we feel that we also got this opportunity because of this quite time with no tourists. It's given us a chance to reset, revitalize, and reorient our tourism to pursue the global agenda of sustainability, to address the climate change crisis and all. So for us in Bhutan, we have been actually working for the last 1 year. I mean, how do we reorient? So therefore, in a way, on a positive note, COVID-19 pandemic has also given us this opportunity. And coming to Bhutan and Nepal, as I said, I personally have a special relationship with Nepal because of my study there. But even otherwise, I think Bhutan and Nepal share a long history of cordial association. And it is still being continued today from stand to stand. And just to give a short figure, I mean, even in tourism, our figure says that in 2019, around 1,500 Nepalese have visited Bhutan as a tourist, 1,500 in 2019. And in 2020, during the COVID time, I mean, till I think March, February, just in 2 months, we had about 101 Nepali visiting as a tourist to Bhutan. And then from Bhutanese side, about 5,200 Bhutanese have visited in 2019 to Nepal. So therefore, even in the tourism sector, but besides that, I think so many things are also happening. But of course, when you look at the number looks quite small. But then, should we really care about this number? And I hope to answer this question in my presentation. So now let me go to my presentation. So just to set the context, in Bhutan, everything that we do, when you talk about a nation, we basically talk about three things. We call it as a Tsawasum, basically the three precious triple gem. And that actually comprises of our king. This picture here is the royal family, they present. Then the second one is the country, represented by our national flag here. Then of course, the third one is the people. So the king, country, and the people constitutes our Tsawasum, or the national identity. And everything that we do here, we are being guided by our benevolent and very visionary kings, which I think I will be elaborating in my later slides. To set the context, Bhutan is now presently known globally for the different development paradigm that we have been practicing since the early 70s, with the start of our so-called modern development, and which is popularly known as gross national happiness. Now, it was during the reign of our fourth king, whose picture is here, and he's also known as the father of gross national happiness. Now, it was during his reign and our Majesty, the fourth king, who said that gross national happiness should be actually principal yardstick to measure the progress in the place of gross domestic product, which is the conventional, the globally, I mean, that is the measure that takes our development of progress. Now, since then, we have actually officially adopted gross national happiness as our development philosophy, and this has been guiding everything that we do in our country. Now, for instance, our present king says the gross national happiness basically means, in a very simple term, is a values, development with the values. And of course, if you go into the science of gross national happiness, it is science in itself. Now, many a time, those people, I mean, they say, it could be just a rhetoric, it could be just an abstract thing when you talk about gross national happiness. But we have a science, a very advanced science in this. We actually measure the happiness from the development intervention that we do. Of course, these are some details. We have 4 pillars, we have 9 domains, we have 33 indicators, we have 123 variables. So with all this combined together, we can measure the happiness that is being contributed through our development initiatives. And in other words, basically, again, in a very simple term, gross national happiness would basically mean it is a balance. We don't want to pursue just the economic development. To get an economic development, equally, the other non-material, the intangible development goals, those are the things that we will be pursuing through this principle. Now, globally, gross national happiness has now spread, actually. We know that since 2011, the third SDG goal, good health and well-being, was actually proposed by Bhutan delegation in UN. And through this UN resolution, this was adopted as one of the SDG goals. And then in 2012, again, as proposed by Bhutan delegation in the UN, the March 20, since then, has been adopted as the International Day of Happiness. And then other countries, like for instance, the United Arab Emirates, they also started to have a ministry for happiness. They have a happiness minister. And of course, some other countries, like even in our neighboring country, in one of the states in India, they also have a happiness minister. And in Bhutan itself, our planning ministry is actually named as Gross National Happiness Commission, and which is headed by Government Secretary. And we have a series of, Bhutan has been leading a series of Gross National Happiness global conferences. And now lately, we also started to have a Gross Global Happiness conferences being organized by some other organization. So the happiness agenda is being now going global. Now coming to tourism, which is my specific topic. Now I had to set this topic because our tourism policy, or in other words, the tagline for tourism, Bhutan tourism, is happiness is a place. So it is, happiness is very much inbuilt in the tourism policy itself. Is the market, is the tagline, is the happiness is place. And also I just wanted to clarify here, when we talk about happiness, whether it is gross national happiness or tourism happiness place, we are not saying Bhutan is the happiest place. We are not saying all Bhutanese are happy. We are not saying we have achieved happiness. We are basically saying happiness is something that we want to pursue. All human beings, including Bhutanese, that is the ultimate thing that we want to pursue. So just wanted to clarify, we are not saying, we are definitely not the happiest country. I mean, if you go by the happiness report, Bhutan is somewhere in the 70s or 80th rank. So therefore, we are definitely not. But that is the point that we want to say. Globally, everybody should pursue towards getting happiness. So therefore, our tourism policy is very much grounded and guided by gross national happiness. And for that matter, any policy that we adopt in our country has to be guided by gross national happiness development philosophy. And in fact, any new policy has to be screened through happiness screening tool. So if that policy, a new policy that is being proposed, doesn't pass that gross national happiness screening test, the policy will be not approved. So any policy intervention that we have, it has to pass through this. So similarly, our tourism policy is also very much guided and grounded in the happiness. Now, this is a statement, a quote from Our Majesty, basically saying that it was the prescient visionary decision of our fourth king in the early 70s when tourism just started. Our tourism started in the early 70s. When tourism started, it was Our Majesty, the fourth king's prescient and visionary vision to adopt this policy as high value, low volume. Now, high value, low volume has been guiding our tourism for the last 50 years. Now, in fact, this year, on the 1st December 2021, we will be celebrating 50 years of tourism in our country. And for the last 50 years, we have been guided by this policy. And just to make it clear, what it meant was that during in the early 70s, when this decision was being made, our Majesty was under, kind of a pressure, I would say, from his peer or from his advisors, or the neighboring countries, that maybe Bhutan should also open up. And because when you open up tourism, when you allow, there's no restrictions, then the revenue is definitely going to be attractive. But despite that, our Majesty made this very strong and decisive decision, saying that for Bhutan to go forward in the long run, this is the policy. And today we feel we are so blessed. With that decision, had Bhutan could have gone other way. Actually, we could have not had this policy. But then, thanks to our Majesty, as I said, fourth king, we had this vision of His Majesty, the leadership, and since then we are still continuing. So today we are so grateful, and from going forward, of course, there's no question that this policy will continue to eternity. Now, this is just a graphic presentation. We are the gross national happiness in the top. Then we have high value, low volume. Now, high value, what we mean is basically here we want to ensure our tourists, whatever they're getting, they get the best of the services, and also at a premium price. Which again I will be elaborating later on. Then on the low volume side, we are basically talking about this sustainability. We want to ensure that whatever tourists that we are coming here, we are able to take care of it. It would depend on our carrying capacity. We don't want to have a tourist that we are not able to manage, because high value basically have to ensure that our tourists gets best of the best experience. They should not be going complaining that, okay, we didn't have a good time. So these are actually very interrelated. So therefore, high value, low volume. So finally, this will converge in the brand Bhutan, and then of course happiness at the end. Now, again, when I say this, have we achieved high value? Definitely not. This is again a pursuit. We are not saying all tourists that come to Bhutan, they go happy. Maybe there are some tourists who are not getting the best of the services. So there could be some tourists, but majority of tourists, we feel they're going happy. And that is our pursuit. So again, I want to clarify, we are not saying that any tourists that have come to Bhutan, they have gone as a happy tourist. Definitely, I'm not saying that. But our policies, we want to achieve this. So this is in a gist about this policy. Now, what are the underlying principles of this high value, low volume? Now, our tourism policy vision, the vision of our tourism policy says Bhutan as a destination should be green, sustainable, inclusive, viable, and high value. So this is the vision of our tourism policy that we want to pursue. Now, these are some points that contributes towards the high value, low volume. Like basically, we are talking about happiness of the citizens, we as a host, and also as a tourist. It's not just the happiness of the tourist again. We are talking about happiness of our own citizen also as a host. We are surely talking about sustainability. That has been actually the underlying principle for adopting this policy of high value, low volume. Sustainability, inclusive and equitable. Within the host here. Every citizen should be getting benefits from this tourism. But of course, again, we have not achieved 100%. We are pursuing this. Then, of course, the culture and environment preservation and promotion. That is, again, a very strong element of this high value, low volume. And also, more importantly, the tourists, that it has to be immersive, for them experience. And also the tourists that we want to target. We don't want to, again, have any tourists that here. We want whoever comes here as far as possible, mindful, responsible tourists. We also, since our policy says this, if we are not able to filter out, of course, we may not be again able to do 100% filtering, but then our policy basically says we also want to make sure that what type of tourist comes to our country. It is not totally an open door policy here. Now, quality over quantity, Ms. Rachna was talking about this. Definitely, when you talk about this, we are talking about avoiding mass tourism, over tourism, which has been a big issue just pre-COVID. And more importantly, because of the gross national happiness development philosophy, tourism policy is also, it goes beyond revenue and receipts. While if we totally open up, and of course, we could had a short-term, very quick for revenue or fortune, but that is something not our policy. While we also want to make money through high value, low volume. But at the same time, we totally don't want to sacrifice the other components of the happiness. Of course, then the more recent model, the economic model in tourism is less is more, and which actually is being taken care by our policy. Now, this is the crux of the high value, low volume. Now, high value, low volume, how do we operationalize this? We operationalize this mainly because of this a very unique tourist system, and we believe maybe we are the only country, but I could be wrong. But as far as my knowledge is concerned, we could be the only country. There are two things. One is any tour that comes to Bhutan has to be pre-arranged through a Bhutanese tour operator. Of course, we have our counterpart tour operators in other countries. We know that there are many tour operators in Nepal that work with our tour operators here, similar in other countries. But the basic condition is you have to pre-arrange. You just cannot walk in or just decide tomorrow and I want to come here. Of course, we want to facilitate this, but basically it has to be pre-arranged. You have to have a counterpart kind of a ground handler here in the country. Then second is you have to pay a minimum set by the government, a prepaid cost for tourist visa. Of course, now this is one big misconception. People think that whatever they're paying is just for the visa, and which is not. As of now, the minimum daily package rate, which we call for one tourist, it is $250. But it's of course there are some details, but just for the understanding here for this group, $250 per day per person. Now, with this prepayment and other criteria fulfilled, visa will be issued. So then now they can come. No, depending upon the criteria agreed between the tour operators and their operators. And with this fees, they will be taken care of everything actually. Their accommodation, minimum of 3-star, their meals, their transport, their also a dedicated full-time guide, tour guide. And, so these are the basic things that will be taken care by this $250. So this actually I have already talked about. The tour arrangement process that we need to have an overseas tourist agent, Bhutanese tour operator, then process for visa, then of course. So this is the process here. So this is the minimum daily package I just talked about. Now this $250 also include this sustainable development fee of $65 per person per day is what we call as sustainable development fee. This basically goes directly to the government for the sustainable development initiatives of the country. That fees goes directly there. I mean, then the balance, of course, this will be taken care by the tour operators and to meet these various expenses. So we also feel maybe we are the only country that levies this so-called the sustainable development fee, which is 65 per tourist per day, and mainly again to support our tourism policy and also the national development policy. I mean, sustainability and sustainable development is at the core of our development. Now, what are the other policies and practices that are supporting high value low volume? Of course, the main are these two: the minimum daily package rate, which they have to pay in advance. It has to be pre-arranged, and also that part also, includes the sustainable development fee. That is the core part of the high value low volume. But there are other policies and practices that support this policy. For instance, our constitution mandates 60% of our forest cover for all times. And as of today, we have 72% of our country is under forest. And because of that, today, Bhutan is the only carbon negative country in the world. And we have actually pledged to be a carbon neutral for all times to come. And we are already, as of today, carbon neutral. And earlier, we also had a short discussion on this. And now, because of this environment agenda, we have actually restricted mountaineering above 6,000. While it's very attractive, to a tourist, if we open up, we could make a lot of money. But then, as I said, tourism in Bhutan, because of this policy, is beyond revenue and receipt. So therefore, we have made this decision. And because of that, today, Bhutan has this highest unclimbed mountain in the world, which is Gangkar Pinsum at 7,570 meters, highest unclimbed mountain in the world. And then organic farming. The vision is Bhutan wants to be in the whole country, as far as agriculture is concerned, wants to be in organic. And then we have a Bhutan for Life NGO, which actually has raised fund for environment and climate change combating. And then, of course, The gross national happiness development philosophy focuses on the sustainability of natural resources, environment, culture, all actually holistic. And then our tourism is, as I explained earlier, is very much regulated. It has to be through licensed tour operators, licensed hotels, and tour guides. Even our camping sites are designated. And of course, to support the policy, we have the green tax on the automobile using fossil fuels, and then if it is an electric car, we have a tax exemptions and things like that. So these are some of the policy practice, other practice that is supporting the policy. Now, I think going forward, post-COVID, post-COVID tourism, basically, as I said earlier, we are basically talking about rethinking, resetting our policy and product and practices. Now, in policy, Bhutan, I mean, I have participated in other such global or regional events, and I've been always saying, while we are talking about a new normal in tourism, if you talk about new normal in tourism, we are talking about a new policy, especially globally also. But for Bhutan, what I'm saying is, we really don't have to look for a new policy or new model, because our policy of high value, low volume fits very well, even post-COVID. Because post-COVID, we are talking about basically, COVID has now made us realize that health is so important. So therefore, the tourism going forward, it will be, all the tourists will be, I think, very much mindful of the health and, safety and all. So therefore, we are talking about individual tourism. We are not talking about mass tourism. So therefore, our policy of high value, low volume, maybe other destinations might have to rethink their policy. But what we are saying is, humbly, we are saying we really don't have to rethink our policy. It just needs to be reinforced, our high value, low volume, because it fits so perfectly with this post-COVID scenario. Because we are talking about, as I said, revenue, beyond revenue receipts, talk about sustainability, and we are talking so much about climate change, even in this policy. Now, in terms of product, because of this COVID experience, especially in Bhutanese context, we are already thinking of, again, so far we have been really focusing on the culture and nature part as a tourism product. And of course, the happiness and all. But now we feel that because of the COVID, we have a huge opportunity in specializing in wellness and well-being. We have a strong history or a tradition of traditional medicine and all. So we are thinking that maybe now we have to specialize in this. Bhutan could be an exclusive destination for wellness and well-being, specializes in traditional medicine. That is one. Other could be the community tourism, the agro-tourism, the eco-tourism. So these are some of the new products that we may want to venture into post-COVID. Of course, the other products will still continue, but this is something. And also, most importantly, one big realization from this COVID experience is the need to emphasize or promote domestic tourism, because with such a situation, with no international travel, I mean, domestic tourism could be severe actually. Of course, so far, pre-COVID, Bhutan has never given attention to domestic tourism. Now, because of COVID, we are actually now seriously trying to develop and promote domestic tourism. And then even in terms of practices, of course, these are just an example. Because of policy and because of COVID, maybe we need to go now everything green. So these are some of the things that I could just share with you all. Then just a little information on the COVID-19 response. This graphic is from yesterday, actually, 31st March. And as of 31st March, we have only 3 active COVID cases. This is the total that has been 873. We have had just 1 death related to COVID-19. And then presently we are, since 27th March, we are on the nationwide vaccination program. And as of yesterday, we have completed around 394,765 people vaccinated. And our total eligible population is around 500,000, over 600,000. So we have now almost achieved around 70% of, and we are, our target is to complete this nationwide vaccination by 3rd April, I think by day after tomorrow. So this is going, and because of our visionary leadership in His Majesty the King, we have handled this so well so far. The COVID-19 pandemic, and even the global media like CNN, they have actually covered this, basically sharing how we have done this successfully. And very recently, we had a visit of the Assistant Secretary General of UNDP, and he also made this remark in response in relation to the COVID-19 response. If only there were 193 avatars of His Majesty the King of Bhutan, the world would be a much better place. We are so honored, to hear such words from such dignitaries. Now, again, we are so much championing the environment conservation. This is one event that is coming up. In fact, this was supposed to be done in 2020 October. Because of COVID, this has been pushed back. Now we are actually preparing for this October, the SNOWMAN race. And this is supposed to be the ultimate race for climate action. And world-class athletes are going to participate in this. Just limited, actually. 22 athletes will be participating in this, and they will be running over almost like 300 kilometers through the snow-capped mountains, the high passes and all, and basically to draw the world's attention to the climate change. And Bhutan has been always championing this, and this is also part of our tourism. So finally, this is what our guests always say. They always feel that somehow Bhutan is different. They get an authentic kind of experience, and they feel that the air, the earth, something that's very different in Bhutan. The moment they land, they seem to experience different. That is something that we also like to give to our tourists. As per our policy. So this is my last slide. Quote from His Majesty the King. So thank you very much.